Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. I am here as always with my good friend Rudros. Say hi. How you doing?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me.
And it is set review season, so we're going through. We've got two more to go. Right here we have water. It's the last of our major elements, and we're starting off with a legend. This is Astrius. He's a 5 cost FFBE Will Weaver, and so he costs 5, and if you have 7 or more BE characters in your break zone or removed from the game, he's free. And when he attacks, you get to either choose a forward, it loses 7,000 power till the end of the turn, or he deals a point of burn damage. So I've seen a lot of interesting opinions on this. And the first thing everybody said when this card was foiled is, oh my god, Soiree! And it's like, if Soiree was good, Formelda would have made Soiree the best deck in the game. So clearly, I don't think one card of support is enough to ever bring Soiree back. So I don't even really consider it in that context. And if it's not, that, so there aren't any really heavy BE decks anymore. Like the closest ones I can think of, like Warriors, you're on Axstar and you're on Tyvis, that's 6. Maybe you throw 3 Astrius in. There's like the Fina backup that gets you to like 10 BE characters, but still that's like not enough. And from experience playing a lot of Ico last set, she comes online really late.
hmm
So I don't know. Like, am I excited for this? Like this BE build around. There are no summons in Brave Exvius to kind of pad things out with. That's another like easy way to kind of get those extra padding. And even if you do get through all this payoff, he's a free 9K that if he attacks next turn, he's Behemoth K. Is that worth it? I don't know. What do you think here?
I it So like I do appreciate that they've kind of started to lean in this like subtle misdragon counter with some of these cards that hey, as long as they're removed from the game, you kind of it still counts for you. Like I think they did that with Ico last set too, so it can't just be like hot misdragon. It doesn't work. So if a free 9K is never a bad thing, I kind of misread it when I first saw him. I thought it was just when you get to the start of the attack phase. I was like, well, that's pretty good, but he has to actually attack. So that first turn you play him, he just sits there. Because if it was just start of attack phase, you play him and just say, okay, instant point of damage. Like to me, that's the effect that's appealing about him. Losing 7K is like I mean, it'll get rid of a Refia, it'll get rid of a Ferris without, triggering Ferris. So that it has some targets, but there's a lot of stuff that's not going to kill. So I like the instant damage on him. But yeah, I just wish he didn't have to attack for it. And maybe they didn't want a card that he's just like, I'm just gonna sit here and just like slowly kill you. But I don't know, Sophie did that. Omega could do that. Like they have printed cards like that in the past. So I don't know. If again, it's another one of these strange cards that there's nothing wrong with any of his text. But like you said, I don't think he's going to really fit in Soiree. So where does he go beyond that? Like, I don't know. I like him. He's a cool card for a legend, but I just don't know where we're going to see him.
I mean, I do think he will be really good in Soiree. I just don't really think Soiree is like competitive. Like that deck was so strong and like playable for so long that it's kind of like poisoned people's brains in a way. Anytime they see multi-element cards or Brave Exvia stuff, they're like, "Oh, this can go in Soiree, and Soiree will be like the deck
Right.
to play this thing." And it's like, no, Soiree was like 3 years ago. Like they've printed
Yeah.
better stuff since then, and like yeah, Soiree did want like Brave Exvius water characters. That would have been fantastic in Soiree. But again, like, when's the last time you saw somebody play Madame Metal against you? It's been a
Yeah.
while. Like, so I don't know. I don't. The only other thing I will say is that like if this Warrior of the Crystal deck ends up being a thing, he will maybe fit in there because I can get a lot of Brave Exvius characters out of the deck very quickly, maybe. But
Yeah.
that's like the only place that I really see him taking off. Moving along, we have some of the best. So much good art this set, but this is Gao. This is a 2 CP backup water in FF6, a water backup.
How about that?
I mean, that already like that's almost worth talking about, regardless of the text on the card.
Yeah.
Um, what he actually does, if you have 3 more monsters, he becomes completely free, which is cool. And it has one of the weirdest. action abilities. I like the lore on it, like what it does. So you pay a cost and you sacrifice them, and you get to search for a Gao of that cost and a monster of that cost. You play the Gao for free, and you add the monster to your hand. So he goes off into the Vate and he comes back stronger. Is the idea?
Yeah.
Such like the lore here is really cool. As far as the card itself goes, first evaluation you can do is this is a water backup for Cat 6. They have to trade the back attack Gal, but there's so much value in backups in that deck. In particular, there's never been a playable water backup. The closest one was Owser, which is like pray your opponent has a 2 cost you want to steal to like even consider. This is the first one that like you could consider and just play it as a vanilla backup. That's like decent on its own. For the effect itself, having a potentially free backup is cool, and water's like the best element for this, right? You know, Blue Worm is so cheap; it's literally free to play. Same for Tomberry, Kalu. Like, if you wanted Gao to be free, I think any other element that would just never happen. But in water, and specifically, I think that is text that could be relevant. The action ability is strange. I wish he like searched the Gao to hand and played the monster. Like, or like monster of X or less, because the fact that it has to be specifically X means you're kind of limited by what Gao costs are available, and there's only 2. There's Gao only can cost 2 or it can cost 5. There's no in between.
See that limited? Wow, yeah, you weren't kidding. It's a legit 2 or 5.
And there is like 1.5 playable 5 cost monsters in the game. Like the whole history of the game, there's one monster that's called, it's Luminous Puma and maybe Lightning Behemoth if you're feeling like spicy.
Yeah.
So I feel like they could have made it like X or less on the Gao search if they wanted to do that. That's kind of why I wish they would just like let you play the monster to the field and pick the Gao up. Like I think that would make more sense, but I don't know on like the latter effect. Like I said, it's not bad to just like pay 2, search a Blue Worm, Gao comes back into play, like play the Blue Worm then. It's just like, am I excited to do that outside of a 6 deck? And 6 is probably like 6 has no monsters to begin with, so that text isn't relevant in that deck. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
I wonder if what they did intend for you to do is simply to just get the next copy of him as the backup, put it into play. Like you said, it would be cool to get a water backup for 6 so you could play the Strago, but the Gao with the back attack was actually pretty decent. It was kind of like a little protection buff with the power. The only other thing is like, yeah, he's kind of like this conflicting thing too, because he wants to do, he's better with monsters because he's free. But the Legend Gao is also very good with monsters, which obviously name clashes with this. So, like, if you're going monsters and you're doing water, I would assume the Legend Gao is better. So, yeah, just kind of another one of these weird cards. Like, all the text on him is very fine. Man, I didn't realize there was the 2 and 5s only. I looked that up, and yeah, very strange cost. So, I think you did a really good assessment of that.
Yeah, and I guess like you can play this with the Legend Gao. You can sacrifice this, pay 5, search a Luminous Puma and that Gao, and play the other Gao to the field. You could crack it, pay 2, fail to find a Gao of cost 2, and then cast the Legend if you have one. Like,
yeah,
there's nothing saying you can't run both in the same deck. That is a lot of space, and the other issue with monster decks is you got to have room for the monsters. You like where does that actually end up starting to kind of slot in? So he's interesting. I think he's going to see some amount of play. He's also interesting because he is a backup you want to play multiples of as well. Like, he's better if you have 3 copies, then you can, pay 2, search a Blue Worm, pay 2, search a Blue Worm. So, we'll see. Kimari. Let's go to the full art on this. This is some more of that gorgeous Ruby Asami art. So, Kimari is a 4-cost Job Guardian, Category 10, 8k, with back attack. If a Category 10 forward you control other than Kimari is dealt damage, you reduce it by 2,000 instead. And when Kimari enters the field, Kimari gains, if a forward you control is other than Kimari is dealt damage, reduce the damage by 2,000 instead. So what Kimari does, I'll kind of clarify this, is all the time, if a Category 10 forward takes damage, other than Kimari, they have it reduced by 2. On the turn he goes in, every other character also gets 2,000, and your Category 10 characters have a 4,000 protection. Um, and I'll let you talk. You messed around with Guardians quite a bit. What does this card do? And Kamari's never been a great name for Guardians. We can start with that.
He is not. Yeah, no. Final Fantasy X is my personal favorite Final Fantasy, and I just confirmed it. So, with counting this card, there are 6 versions of Kimari, and not one of them has been amazing. Not one of them I've been like, oh my gosh, this guy is gonna do it. And maybe that's kind of thematic. I don't know if someone on the team like hates this guy, but he's kind of left out on the sphere grid because he's the only member who like he has a very tiny portion of the sphere grid, and then he kind of copies someone else who you send him on. So maybe that's why. But just I don't know. I'm just very underwhelmed. Like I don't even think it's thematic. Why doesn't he protect himself? He's one of Yuna's guardians. Like, is it because he tries to fight Seymour alone in that one scene? I don't think that's thematic that he doesn't protect himself. And even if he did, even if it's damage, so if they just have outright break effects or top of your deck or bottom effects, it doesn't work on any of those. Like when I saw it with the back attack with this art, my mind is like, oh, this is going to be great. And then I kept reading. I was like, oh, that's it. And like the first field effect is nice, but the second effect, it's just on entry. And then after that, it goes away. And again, it only matters if it's damage based. So I don't know. To me, it's another Kamari. Like, I mean, I guess I'll play it because I have no other 10 character, with that name to play, but it's not the banger I'm looking for.
It's also just so expensive. And something else that's annoying about this is he kind of loses to everything.
Yeah.
If you could cullen him, the protection doesn't get applied. It's applied to the protection is on Kamari. Like so, if he loses his text, all your forwards still take the damage. He has an entry ability, so he can get Amaterasu'd. And he has no protection himself, so he'll die. He's not on the field. Everyone else still takes full damage again. So, like, if you're trying to protect, say, like, the Yuna legend from Opus, I think it was 20. Like, he doesn't protect her if he dies, in replacement. And you kind of wonder at that point, like, how much better is this than a card like Miwa, for instance? 2 CP, back attack, activate all your forwards, and then on damage 3 or 5, like, they all get, like, the 2,000 power, and you, like, heal them all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you kind of have to just, like, start wondering, like, is that just the better way of, like, if you need a back attack forward, even in a 10 deck?
Yeah.
I like the concept. I think 4 is way too much to spend on this, because you're probably paying more than your opponent is for whatever the removal is what I also, like, am worried about. Like, you're maybe trading even at best, but, like, even trades don't win games for fair decks. And FF10, for all, it's a very fair deck right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Corsair, this is the water 3 cost in the cycle of the draw on entry, and if you have 4 or more of the same element, you get the bonus effect. This one's kind of strange to me. So you choose a card in your break zone. If you have 4 or more, you put it on the bottom of your deck, so you get to, like, recycle something. I kind of just don't like this one. Like, don't get me wrong, recycling stuff is cool, Goodness knows you draw all of your ashes when you play Mono Water way faster than you want to play them sometimes.
Yeah.
But also, Mono Water, like, getting to that 13th card for Ash is so difficult sometimes, and this, like, resets it by 1, and maybe we're not always playing Ash, but, like, I don't know. Water has so many good backups and so many good cards, and it is, like, reliant on having a stacked break zone that this card just seems like it just outright is against what it's trying to do. Do you feel differently?
No, I think you nailed it.
Speaking of Final Fantasy X, we have Jecht in water again. It's been a little while for him. He had the hero back in, was it Opus 14, and then the water fire common. So when Jecht enters the field, choose a forward to turn it to its owner's hand. And then when a character opponent controls is returned to the hand, choose a forward opponent controls. It loses 3,000 power until the end of the turn. He's fine. He's kind of baby Leviathan. I don't think he's ever going to see play outside of Limited. A bounce in Limited is pretty decent, but, like, the 3k power is only going to matter in a format where, like, power and fighting matters, which pretty much is exclusively Limited at this point.
When you absolutely positively must shrink your opponent's new knoll, this is the card for you.
I mean, I guess it does also bear mentioning that if Jekt Block ever becomes a thing, this is a water card named Jekt
Yeah,
that is like squint and you can play this. If
yeah,
like the water fire one doesn't really have any text. This one, like I would play this over the water fire one, so
yeah.
that could be relevant. Um, we have up next Jed. This is the Sopfo in water. 3 cost Job Samurai, 8,000 power. If you have a crystal, he gains 1,000 power and brave. When he attacks, you may pay a crystal. If you do so, you draw a card. I'll let you start on this one. What do you think?
So I was insanely underwhelmed by this and basically just dismissed it outright. But then I watched your quick reaction reviews that you always do when the cards first got revealed, and you had mentioned he was a samurai, which I just completely looked over that text because just nothing about this guy strikes me as a samurai. I was like, oh, okay. Now, granted, samurais haven't really seen the light of day in quite a while. They did get a new limit break in Tenzin, so maybe they can make a resurgence. I'm not sure how much having water will or won't matter to them. I'm not really sure what the ultimate game of that is, but that's cool that it's a part of it. Not looking at the samurai portion of it, it's just like it's fine. I mean, I guess if you're playing all these Sopfos together, he at least is like giving you a benefit from the crystal, and then if you still have a crystal, he's a 9K brave. That's kind of nice, but like I don't know, all these Sopfos, I'm kind of just like, oh, eh, eh,
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the best of them. I think he's a 3 CP 9K brave if you have the crystal, which you know that's not nothing. That second effect is not once per turn. Samurais have a tendency to generate a bunch of crystals that they don't really have anything to do with anyway. You'd see them run like the crystal Bahamut and such for a long time to try to like
mm,
just make use of them. And that isn't once per turn. And Hien and the new Tenzin both allow him to attack twice, so he can kind of pay for himself if he does that. He's a big defensive body, which kind of fits there. I don't know if Water Fire Samurais will end up being a place to be, but I think that like if they do, it's only because Jet exists.
yeah.
You run Larsa. Larsa can get you Boomer Tenzin. You can play all the good water summons. I don't know. I kind of just I don't know that that'll be a deck, but I don't hate this card just because of that potential, and it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Uh, we have Stiltskin. This is a Moogle category FFCC. 3 cost, 3K. Another one that dies to Wingwraith in the set. When Stiltskin enters the field, choose a job Moogle of cost 2 or less in your break zone, play it onto the field. And you can dole 2 active Moogles to make a forward lose 2,000 power until the end of the turn. Um, I mean, I love the art. The card's great for that. This just, it's a common, and it feels like one to me. Like, if you look up the Moogles that cost 2 or less, there's like 5 of them, and
Yeah.
none of them
Slim
are.
pickings. Three of them came out this set.
So, I'm not particularly excited for this. The name is really bad, given that like the Stiltskin backup and Wind is so good. Even if you're playing like Wind Water, that backup can get you an Akalu. And yeah, the Moogle forwards are just not good.
I mean, like I think the idea behind this card is cool. It's a nice little Moogle engine, and I like the idea that he revives something, and then you can immediately dull both to use his action ability. Like that's cool, except it's only a 3K reduction. He himself, or sorry, it's a 2K reduction. He himself is only 3K. Like, give me a Moogle engine. Come on, Good King Mogglemog never even really took off the way like some of them did. Like, give me a Moogle engine. Like, I don't know why they were so like tepid with this design.
From what I understand, Moogles were like one of the best decks in chapters at the end. They might just be
Mm.
scared. It's just like we're not touching that again. Uh, Up next, we got some more Final Fantasy VI art. This is Strago. So he's a blue mage. He's another water backup. I will say this matters a lot less for Category 6 just because, like, if you're not playing the Strago forward in water, why are you in water in your FF6 deck to
Yeah.
begin with? 6 costs. When Strago enters the field, choose a card in your damage zone, add it to your hand, put a card from your hand into the damage zone. Its EX burst will not trigger, so this is the same text as the Larsa Legend from Opus 14 or Leviathan Summon from a couple sets ago. Um, when a card is put into your damage zone, your opponent selects a forward they control, put it into the break zone. This effect will only trigger during your turn and only once per turn. This is a very weird card. You kind of get like that Leviathan stapled to when it's Homos in a way the turn you play him, which is like it's okay. It's not. It would be overcosted for just that, but it's theoretically repeatable if you're willing to like go in on this either self damage or damage swapping thing that like a couple of cards can do. You know, making your Larsa and your Leviathan do something is pretty cool. That said, water also can't damage itself, to my knowledge. Like, or if it is, it's very rare.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to repeat this effect, otherwise I just don't think it's worth it. I don't know. I think this is just too expensive. I think if you wanted to run a backup that has this weird extra mode like this, you could run the back attack lose off instead.
Mm.
Like that does something similar. Like you can use that as like a protection spell and a Famfrit. This one like kind of like does that. I'm not a big fan of this card. What do you think?
Man, this is it. It was so close. It was so close to being, it, maybe not good, but at least super interesting. And I was really digging it as I read it until that final line of text. Take away that final line of text. Take away the line that says this effect will only trigger during your turn and once per turn. I thought this was like, well, that's like a cool punishment card, right? That, hey, every time you attack me and hurt me, you have to give something else up, almost like kind of a little anti-aggro card. But then your opponent kind of has interesting choices too, because, okay, well, I can just give up the forward that attacked, or I can bring in a limit break Leo and then sacrifice him. Like, but yeah, because it's limited specifically to your turn, like I could maybe still understand the once per turn, but by limiting it to your turn, now it's you have to do all these self damage effects. Like, man, it would have been so cool as like kind of an aggro punisher. Like, aha, every time you hurt me, I get to take something away from you. But that is not the case, so I don't see it seeing play.
I could almost even see it saying like outside of your opponent's attack phase. You know,
Yeah,
like they're in main phase one, then maybe you cast the Leviathan and get to sneak the ability on them, or like if you can do this more than once per turn on your turn, you should just be able to get multiple triggers off of it. Making it only once per turn makes it so much harder to get value out of this guy long term.
yeah.
I think he's interesting. I just the package for there's so few cards with this effect that I really don't see this being the most played with card.
Yeah.
We have our common summon from water. This is Siren Mobius. EX Burst, choose a forward. During this turn, the next damage dealt to it becomes 0 instead. Draw a card. Seems fine to me. Water seems very flush with good EX Burst summons, so I don't know that this makes the cut over even like the 2CP Leviathan from like Opus 14. Do you see this any differently?
No, comparing this to Kuchulain just makes me wonder if that card was just a mistake. Like, it's triple the cost, and Kuchulain can just win a game on its own by saying that big thing you thought was going to happen actually doesn't, and I still have a burst, and I still draw a card. Like, yeah, it pales in comparison to its contemporaries.
Yeah, like I said, this isn't even competing with Cucullin. It really is like the Leviathan from Opus. Was it Opus 13? The one that like is like 2K or 5K
Yeah,
protection.
yeah, you could protect something. Yeah,
Like that's like the closest one that I can think of to this. This is
Mm-hmm.
better in some ways and worse in others. Uh, Next up, we have Cecil, Theat Rhythm, Category 4. You can, or Job Paladin, sacrifice them, put them into the break zone, choose a forward. During this turn, the next damage dealt becomes 0 instead. And then for Water 3 and sacrifice them, choose a forward, put it into the break zone. So you kind of make him into this, send effect. He seems okay. Do you have anything like that you would say on this guy?
No, he's a fun common. The second effect is way too overcosted. I get that it's any forward and that it like puts him into the break zone, which is very strong text, gets around, can't be broken. Not that there's a lot of cards that do that these days. But my gosh, 6 and I gotta lose it back up. Like, come on, what are we doing?
Yeah, I mean, but it's a 2 CP backup. These like this can't be too bad based on that alone, And it is Category 4 can be relevant if things like Rydia ever come back. That first ability is not bad, if you need to protect, a Yuna or something. I could see him seeing some play. He's just not going to be an all-star or anything. But for a comment
Yeah.
to be considered, good job. Speaking of comments that might be considered, we have Titus. So this is Titus. He is a 4 CP EX burst, 7k power, Thea Rhythm category 10. When he enters the field, choose a forward of cost 4 or less opponent controls, returns to its owner's hand, and when a character opponent controls is returned from the field to its owner's hand, draw a card. So it's kind of like a Tros in a way, except it does it on entry. Um, Kind of weirdly, Titus has like this exact card in Wind as well with the Strutter
Yeah.
deck Titus. That card actually is pretty good and has seen a lot of play. I think this card actually is worth considering for the same reason, especially if you don't want to be playing Wind. If you play Tros and then this Titus and then you bounce something, you draw 2 cards, and the burst is great. Just seems like a pretty decent card.
Yeah, I was first drawn to him because he's playing clarinet, another clarinet player like Lightning, so I got to get a copy for Miss Kelly. But yeah, just these commons, a lot of them are just so forgettable, and this one is generically good. Get rid of something and draw. I like it.
Yeah. The only other thing about it, I guess, it could be negative, is the name is kind of bad if you actually do have room for the
Yeah.
LB. But I assume if you're playing this with the Tros, you probably don't need the LB that turn anyway. So we have Peren. She's the Water Warrior, the Crystal. Notably, she makes crystals for them potentially if the other ones die, but it's on death, not on play. Would probably be really annoying if it was on play, because then she could like help pay for all of them once she came into play. Um, we'll talk more about these when we get to Lucio.
Yeah.
Moogle FFTA. This is the standard unit backup in Water. This set, the 2 costs that or the ones that you can sacrifice if a forward of their thing entered this play this turn. This one returns a forward of cost 4 or less in his opponent's hands. The same ability as Titus. Again, I just kind of like all of these. You could just play this, play a Leo, draw a card, sacrifice this, bounce something, bounce a Cloud LB or something back to their hand. Just seems decent all the way around. It's like a pretty good upside. You don't have to hold it up to dole it. Not much more to say there, I don't think. Do you disagree?
Yeah, nothing bad.
Mog 6. These are our pre-release sleeves for the set. Never would have guessed this was Mog 6, I'm not going to lie. Art is fantastic on this card, but just would not have guessed that's the character it's drawing. So category 6, Job Warrior Moogle, just like most of the recent ones. For each Moogle you control, other than Mog 6 you control, he gains 1,000 power, and when he's put from the field into the break zone, you can discard a Moogle to play him onto the field dull. What do you think here? You're the 6 expert.
I I just don't understand. If you're gonna have a card that can like revive itself, it needs to do something. If you think of like the Kalkabrenna cards, I think there was one that like taxed someone when it came back, or it did something along those lines. Like it needs to do that. It needs to do something. Like if it can just revive and it doesn't do anything, it's just a body. What's the point? And it comes in dull. Why? You're already making me play Moogles. I have to specifically have a Moogle to bring him back. Like he's just a 5K. I guess they were afraid that, oh my gosh, but if you have all these Moogles, like, again, Vocal, then let me play the Moogles. Like, encourage me to play the Moogles. I don't know. Why am I putting in all this effort for just a body that doesn't have any effects? No thanks.
And you're discarding a Moogle, so you're basically paying for. You just get kind of a free Kusith out of it or whatever,
Yeah.
And he doesn't. He's just a bungus, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know. I wish this card had like something I could look at and go, oh yes, that's the this is the one. Like even like Mogglemog isn't a job Moogle. You can't discard
Yeah.
Mogglemog to revive this. This was the same thing with like Mogglemog. It was like discard 2 cards to get it back. This one's like
Hmm.
discard a card to replay it, but again, it doesn't do anything. I can't think of anything that like triggers when he would enter. Like, just kind of a whiff. I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's really cute, so I'll give it that. Marlboro. This is the monster of the set for water. 1 cost, category Sopfo, job Marlboro. When 1 or more forwards attack, you can sacrifice it, and then when it's put from the field in the break zone by any means, all the forwards opponent controls lose their abilities and 3,000 power. Plays really nicely with Witch. You can play this with Witch, sacrifice this, all their forwards lose their abilities in 3,000 power, and then Witch can shrink it by another 7k, so you can kill a 10k with it. Seems pretty decent. Um, Pretty simple there. There's some other funny things if you make stuff lose their abilities. Maybe they have a Spiritus, and now all of a sudden two of their dark forwards die at the same time.
Yeah.
Um, this one seems fine to me. Like you could play it. It's got really strong competition with the other water monsters, though.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is a shame because it's cool. I like it's very thematic. I like that the bad breath causes them to lose all their effects. So it's neat. But yeah, I can't see you picking this over Blue Worm and Tros and Echidna. The water has so many good monsters to pick from.
Yeah, I kind of wish the Veligarmanda summon was a Marlboro. Like they'll
Right?
just do all the status effects on the thing. Same thing, but um, well, this is a really interesting card. This is maybe my favorite art of the entire set as well. This looks so good. This is Leviathan. This is the hero summon from water. Um, so category 9 has a bonus on it where if you cast it, you can remove 4 card name Leviathan. Now, notably, that does not include Lord of the Whirl. You can't like partial search names in this game. You remove this from your break zone from the game as an additional cost, and your opponent chooses a forwarder monster they control, put it into the break zone. So it's like a Tomos or a Famfrit, but they can also sacrifice a monster. If you pay the extra cost, they have to do it twice. So it becomes Big Famfrit. Big Famfrit also did do monsters. But it's one-sided, unlike that card was. I'm kind of 2 minds on this card. I think it's really cool. We haven't had a Leviathan tribal at all. And, it's all summons. We've had a couple of cards like this. There's the Shiva that cares about other Shivas. There's a Ramu that cares about other Ramus, and Odin that cares about other Odins. It's cool to see Leviathan get the same treatment on that front. And that second ability is really strong. That 6-cost Famfrit was like a staple in mill decks for years and years and years. And there are a lot of playable Leviathans. 6-cost Levy. There's the break zone or damage zone swap one. There's the draw 2, put 1 top or bottom for like EX burst stacking. There's protection Leviathan. Opus 1 Leviathan for the bounce. There's we both bounce a card Leviathan. Like you can very easily run 15 to 18 Leviathans in your deck if you really want to for this card. But I do also almost wonder if them being able to choose monsters is a downside for this. Like if that was like an option of saying like you can maybe let them choose monsters if they want to, so they can't get around it. But like if your opponent has a Blue Worm and a Apollo on the field, they'll just sacrifice those, right? So, I don't know. Pairs really well with Opus 1 Yuna, of course. This card costing 2 is really strong, probably. But, what do you think on this?
He's basically just a straight up better version of the 15 Atomos, right? I mean, they both cost 3. They both say. I guess maybe if you view the monster as a downside, if you think, oh well, they can just like sacrifice some cheap monster. The majority of decks aren't going to be able to do that. Unlike the Fenrir, I kind of alluded to this in his review that I like that it does something outside the extra cost, and then the extra cost is really worth this. If you have the Una backup down, paying 2 to do the one-sided big Famfrit, that is awesome. I don't know how many Leviathan you need to play to go in on that, and he's really... I think everything about the card is cool. If he doesn't see play, it's just because he suffers from his contemporaries. Water has so many good summons in Kuchulain, in the 6-cost Burst Leviathan, even in the auto ability Cancel Leviathan. Like, there's been a lot of, I think, good water summons that haven't seen play over the years because they're competing with so much stuff. So, yeah, I think a really cool card, great art. But if he doesn't show up, I also won't be surprised, and I don't think it's a reflection on him. I think it's just a reflection on everything around him.
I would say the other thing to kind of keep in mind on this is Water's kind of trended away from the Una backup in recent sets. Mm-hmm. And the difference with this card paying 3 versus paying 2 is night and day.
Absolutely.
So, granted, a lot of the Leviathans that you would play with this are going to cost 3 as well. So then the Una backup gets a lot better, but she's not easy to search in Water as well. Like, you almost want to play like Earth Water at that point. But then maybe you play Earth Water and you can Une this back. Like, There's a lot of interesting potential for that. I just think this card has a lot of potential, and it may go unrealized, but it also could be really strong.
Yeah.
Um, so this is our other water legend of the set. This is Realm. This was IGN's spoiler. So 3 cost, 5K, category 6, job Pictomancer. When a Realm enters the field, if you control 5 or more category 6 characters, you can search for any monster your heart desires of cost 3 or less and play it onto the field. You can tap her, choose a monster that's also a forward. You can gain 2,000 power. It gains 2,000 power till the end of the turn. How do you feel? Are we playing monsters in our 6 decks now?
I mean, if they give me a bunch of 6 monsters, I guess we can, but they don't seem to want to do that. So everyone knows Opus 11 Realm is just one of the strongest tools you can have in a monster deck. So I pose to anyone looking at this card this question: if you took away the condition of the Cat 6 characters, would you play this over that Realm? If it just said enters the field, search for one monster of 3 or less and play it onto the field. Some people I think would, but I think a lot of people would be like, I'd rather have the 2 monsters. I'd rather have the Atomos and the Goblin or whatever it is I'm searching for. But then they slapped this condition that it has to be like, why? Or again, if you want that to be a thing, give us category 6 monsters. Like, I just don't understand that restriction. I think that also makes this card like unplayable and sealed if you even pulled it, because you aren't gonna have that many Cat 6 characters, and that's so many. It's 5.
5
Like,
is so many.
it's so high, and the action ability too is just like, whatever. Like, that's not like it's some amazing action ability. She's a 5K, so she dies to a stiff breeze. I just don't get that part. Just let her take that part away. And again, I don't know if you even would have seen her then, and that part just killed the card. Once again, Realm gets a great full art. This 12 full art still being absolutely one of my favorites, but man, I don't understand. I feel like they just kneecapped her with that text.
This has to have been a card they were like playtesting, and something accidentally broke, and they didn't have time to fix it. And they're like, I don't know, maybe like it searched any monster at one point, which I still don't think would have been broken for 5. Like,
Yeah.
let me pull Luminous Puma out of my deck for if I'm getting 5 categories.
Yeah.
Maybe like originally it was like you could play a monster from your deck of like cost, like of like this. If you had 2 category 6s, you could play a 2 cost. I like think they were scared of a Tomos with lock. It must have
Maybe.
been what happened, but like, yeah, you could take away the category 6 restriction in this, and I think there would be reasons to play the card, but like, I think you would almost start considering it like, is it a side grade on something like a Larcacus? I mean, it's easier to play than Larcacus, so probably it's better than Larcacus at that point, but like, that was a common to like play a monster of 3 or less from your break zone to the field. I don't think the difference between a common from Opus 19 and the legend from Opus 24 is plays from deck and requires a massive deck building cost. Like, if I get 5 category 6 characters, you should let me play the monster for my damn binder.
Yeah, right.
So and this art is so good. Like, I love that this is one of my favorite Final Fantasies. This character's so cool, and they slap this art on this ability, and you just like, I love the action ability. It doesn't even work in sealed either.
Yeah.
There are no monsters in the set that are also forwards.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it is also really funny. IGN spoiled this, and last set they had Chaos, which is like the format warping super threat to the Cecil of the set.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish this card was playable, just because I think it would be an interesting card if there was a playable version of this. But like, even if it was 3, okay, you could go the Gestalian Empire Sid, and then I don't know, maybe you play the Gao backup, and now the Realm is live, and I still think that's pretty fair, right? Like, I don't know. We're giving this card, I think, a little bit too much. Like I said, the only thing I can assume is they broke something with this card in testing, and they didn't know how to fix it without kneecapping it.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, on a happier note, here's Waka. So again, a lot of Category 10 support this set. Guardian Blitzballer, 3 cost, 6K. For each Category 10 character other than Waka you control, he gains 1,000 power. When he enters the field, choose a forward opponent controls. If its power is equal to or less than Waka's power, put it on top of its owner's deck. And use a special, choose a forward, it loses 5,000 power till the end of the turn. You're the Cat 10 guy. How is this one making you feel?
Other than the starter 16 one, well, again, Waka's never really had a great card. His 3-cost Anthem backup was kind of relevant back in the day in Mono Water when that was like, back in the
I mean,
Opus 8
the
7
EX
times.
backup now is also like very commonly
Oh
played
yeah,
as
yeah,
well.
the water one that was really good in Mono Water too. But as far as like forwards, like the only other good one he had was that Guardian one, and that special is way better than this special, like just a 5K. But then again, if you think about him, if you assume he's probably going to be pretty darn big, like if you're going in on a 10 build, so if a 3-cost 9K that essentially kills anything on entry, that's not bad, and then you just got a beater, so. Unfortunately, that starter 16 one is just it's too hard to get off nowadays. There's so many things that just pick it off before it gets the full counters, which is a shame because I really liked that one. I thought he played really well with the package. So, yeah, he's fine. He's maybe it's too much that I like. I almost wish he did more because he's kind of just that one shot. But I think depending on how high you get him, like if you play a 3-cost 10K that kills something on entry and then just gets to stick around, I think that ultimately is going to feel pretty darn good. So the more I think about him, the more I kind of like him.
Yeah, and it's category 10 character, so, if you're in this Wind Water Cat 10 deck, you're going to have a buddy and maybe a brother in your backups, and maybe a Riku, and all of a sudden he gets really big very quickly. I really like the way they templated this one, so, like, he can target, Warrior of Light, and then special to make Warrior of Light small enough to put on, top of the deck as well, if your opponent just, like, randomly has a really large forward. I think it's really cool. I actually like that both he and the old Waka both have specials that are pretty strong. So, like, if you wanted to
Hmm.
play 6 Wakas, I think it's completely defensible to do that. I think this guy just reads really well almost across the board. Kind of like feels like a lightning for the modern day in a way. Like
Yeah.
another version of that Opus 16 Lightning that's been such a staple water card since she was printed. Yeah, I just like her. I like him.
Yeah.
And I think that is it for water. Kind of a weird set for water this time, I think.
Yeah.
Not that water needs the help. I think it's probably the consensus best element in the game, but
Also true.
I think the best cards in this really need like a package or something that doesn't currently exist. So be interested to see which of these cards ends up actually seeing play. But stick around and we'll have some light, dark, and LBs for you.
See ya.